All right. Hey, man, see some new faces tonight, some guys I've never seen. I want to thank all of you guys that are new coming to this very much, man. We appreciate y'all. We kind of turned the facing here tonight because the sun's killing us over here, so we're hiding in the shade because it's like
100 degrees out
Texas heat. It's been hot lately for sure. I'm just glad we've had some wind this week to kind of keep us from just dying out there on the water all week because it was bad there for a while. Last week when we had those few days with no wind, it was like, I think I'm about done with this whole guiding deal.
Yeah, I was about to melt, which honestly wouldn't take much because I'm not, the largest guy.
You don't have a lot of layers to peel away, do you?
Looks like he's already melted.
I could use some melting, honestly. I could use some melting.
I'm not getting into that conversation.
It's a good call because even though
I'm setting myself up for failure on that
even
one.
though I could use some melting, I'm like way bigger than you. So
yeah,
it's a good call. Good call.
Way bigger.
First thing I want to do is, and I know most of you guys are probably followers of the channel, y'all are going to well know about this, but for those that are watching on the internet that may not know, 2 weeks from tonight, we're here on Friday night, June
20th, 19th?
June 19th, Friday, June 19th. 2 weeks from now, we'll have another seminar. We do these every 2 weeks, and the seminar will be at 6 p.m. It'll run to about 7 o'clock, and we'll actually have our tournament registration for our benefit tournament for 22 Kill, that great military nonprofit organization. We're going to do big tournament, 2-day event for them. Registration will start as soon as the seminar is over 2 weeks from now. So if you guys are wanting to come and sign up for that, or any of y'all are wanting to come and sign up for that, come on by the seminar if you can at 6 o'clock. And if not, as soon as we're done with the seminar, we'll have registration set up right here under the same pavilion, right outside of the Lake Fort Marina office. And we'll do registration right here 2 weeks from now. And we'll stay out till everybody's gone. We'll stay out till at least 9 o'clock or till we ain't got any more signing up. So we've had some good feedback. We've had a lot of people calling, and already East Texas, I love living here. I love living in this area, and it never lets me down. The people, you people, you people, and all of you people in East Texas never let me down. We've had many people call already and just want to send donations. We had to set up a separate PayPal account to keep everything separate and let people start sending in cash donations for the guys that were work obligations or had vacation planned for the 4th or whatever, couldn't make it. And most of them are sending way more than their entry fee would have been. So cool. It's, East Texas never lets me down, and I know the rest of y'all are going to kind of show up and show out on that deal. So if you don't know, we're going to have Saturday, July 4th, we're going to have a 2-man open team tournament. Anybody can sign up. It'll be $100 per boat per team. You can fish by yourself, but you still got to pay the $100 entry fee. And that'll be just regular tournament. State regulations, slot limit applies. You can keep 4 unders and 1 over or 5 unders. Yep. And we'll go out and fish, and I believe lines in at 3 o'clock, and we'll do the weigh-in. We'll start at 3, but you got to be in line for the weigh-in by 4. I think that's it. We have a flyer with all the details. I'm probably telling some of those wrong, but anyway, we'll weigh them in at 3 o'clock. When we do the weigh-in, we're also going to have an auction of some awesome items. I know we've got a signed Whiskey Myers guitar. I believe we got some of those top-end, high-end, super expensive coolers. We've got some bait packs, like bait bundles from 6 Cents and Smash Tech coming. And we've got some other things that my mind's slipping. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to auction off that night, so you may get a pretty good deal on some pretty cool merchandise. On top of that, July 5th, we're going to have a guides tournament where you can fish and kind of more of a for fun deal. We'll have some prizes for that tournament, I'm sure, but it's really going to be for pride and fun, and you get to sign up and pick your partner, your guide partner that you want to fish with on Sunday. Me and John are both going to be involved.
Yes, sir.
In fact, I'm going to have Cody Cannon, the lead singer of Whiskey Myers, is going to be in my boat, so you're going to have Cody Cannon as your teammate as well. So you're going to get to fish
I don't know how you made that happen.
You're going to get to fish with a rock star and a really crappy fishing guide.
I mean, that's fair.
It balances out. You have to put up with me, but you get to put up with Cody Cannon, so it works out. But we'll have several other guides, and we're going to do a silent auction at the weigh-in where you can go up and you'll have to bid to get your guide partner for Sunday. And we're going to do that one MLF style, where every fish counts. We're going to weigh them in the boat, take pictures of them on the scale, send them in as we catch them, have hourly updates. It'll be like fishing your own little MLF tournament with your choice of which Lake Fort guide you get to fish with. So that'll be a super fun event, I know. Really, it's going to be all about coming out here, celebrating our independence, doing something we all love to do, chasing these green fish around. And really, more importantly than that, if you don't know what 22 Kill is, their main deal is kind of preventing veteran suicide. But they do all sorts of conventional and non-conventional PTSD therapy. They use their money very wisely. They keep a very low overhead. They run a very tight staff. They work their rear ends off up there at 22 Kill to make sure that every dollar that comes into that organization is going towards helping veterans and first responders that have, you know, some PTSD needs and issues. And
Is this the first time that y'all have any?
this is the first one. We're going to try to make it an annual deal.
Yeah.
And we were really excited about doing it on July 4th because at Lake Fort, July 4th is a big deal.
Yeah.
We have fireworks on the water. I mean, a lot of people come out and watch fireworks the night of July 4th. And with it being on Saturday this year, that's perfect. But with it being July 4th, what a better way, how fitting is that to do a tournament around every July 4th from now going forward, where we give back to those that maintain the independence that we're here celebrating July 4th. So
100%.
it's just a perfect fit. It's something, I mean, I get goosebumps talking about it because, you know, most of you guys know that I did serve in the Marine Corps, but I had a much easier road than a lot of these guys that this is going to help, and all these guys that this is going to help. And it means a lot to me to be able to do something, and I can only do it through the platform that all of y'all have helped me build and y'all that are watching online. And so thank y'all for allowing us to build that platform, and we're going to use it to the best of our ability to help people that need it, that matter to us. So we appreciate y'all's help on that. All right. Sorry about the long ramble there.
Squirrel.
Yeah, well, you know, that's a big deal to me. I'm pretty passionate about that deal. So when I get to talking about it, I just kind of go and go and go.
That's a big deal, though.
You know, we're getting to that time of year. We're not, I wouldn't say we're in the dog days yet, but boy, it's starting to feel like the dog
close.
days. The water temps aren't quite dog day water temps as far as the fishing quality goes. And you know, I think I talked to a couple other guys. I know I talked to you and I talked to a couple other guys. Today was a little bit of a struggle bite-wise, but man, most days, the last couple of weeks, like we've kind of caught them. They've been biting pretty darn good. Like, you know, catching 20 fish a day hasn't been out of the ordinary, and that's pretty good. So, it's not dog days yet as far as fishing conditions go, but it's coming, and we are starting this week, really this week especially, I'm starting to see the signs of those dog days setting in. And the number one clue to me that it's getting to be dog days of summer is when fish start really suspending up off the bottom a lot, okay? Suspending fish are known in the bass fishing world as the most difficult fish to catch. They're the hardest fish to catch that there is. In the summertime, though, bass's metabolism is at a peak. You know, it's a cold-blooded animal, so the hotter that the water gets, the more a bass has to eat to maintain his weight. So just because they're suspending doesn't mean they're not eating. It doesn't mean you can't catch them. Are they difficult to present a bait to and keep a bait in their face? Yeah, absolutely. Really very difficult. And that's what makes suspended fish a challenge is it's hard to keep the bait in their face for a long period of time over and over again and get them to trigger and bite. Because remember, guys, we're not feeding them real shad. None of us are live bait fishing out here.
Yeah.
You know, if you were to go out there and find some suspended fish and drop a shad down to him and hold it in his face, you'd catch them all the time.
All the time.
That's not what we're doing. And really, in bass fishing, it's hard to get a bait. There really is no bait unless you can get straight vertical over them. You can't really put a bait in their face and fish it real slow and thorough. So that's what makes it such a challenge. We've got a smaller window to trick them into biting a piece of plastic or metal, right? Or plastic, you know what I mean? So that's what makes suspended fish so hard to catch. But in the summertime, they're aggressive enough, they're wanting to feed enough. It can be done, okay? It can be done. And so tonight I thought we would really go super in depth on summer suspending bass and tell you, you know, the different types of suspending bass and how we attack them differently depending on how they're set up, where they're suspended. And one thing that I'll tell you is the only time bass suspend in the summer is when the bait suspends.
Yeah.
If the bait isn't suspending, the bass will go find a piece of structure in the depth they want to be in and get on that structure. The bass may want to be in 10 foot of water. They may only want to be 10 foot under the surface, but the feeding bass will go find a point or a hump or something that's in 10 foot of water. But if that bait starts suspending, then those bass start suspending. It's 100% related to shad. It's a shad bite, nothing but a shad bite. And you will absolutely see the correlation between bass eating shad and the techniques that we talk about tonight on how we try to catch these fish. Everything we do is imitating a shad, a wounded shad, some type of shad in some kind of way. All right, so first let's talk about the different types of suspended bass that you'll see. And I put some numbers on here and I tried to give them a value. Okay, so if you'll look right here, what we've got on the bottom, this line at the top, that's the surface. I don't even know if I spelled that right. I hope I did, but I don't know. And this down here would be, you know, the crest of our point or our hump. Whatever structure we're going out there and graphing with our electronics, this would kind of be the top of it, right? So what you'll see is when these fish start suspending, sometimes you'll see fish suspending right over it. Sometimes you'll see fish suspending kind of relating to it, but suspending out off the side. Other times they'll get super high, but they'll still be over it. And then sometimes they'll get really high and get really pretty far outside, away from where they're not really relating to this anymore. They're just kind of out off of it, pretty good waves. Okay. The closer they are to the peak of that structure, the easier it's going to be to catch them typically. Does that make sense? So I put a 1 on the blue. If you look at the blue arcs, they're suspended, but they're close, they're right on top of the peak, and they're just, you know, maybe 5, 8, 10 feet above the crest of that structure. Those fish, I absolutely want to stop and fish those fish. They are very, very catchable. When they suspend kind of still close to it, but off the sides of it, they're off the sloping side, but they're just above that. They're not really way out off it. They're not really way out above it. That's my number 2 value. That's my second favorite. These fish are still very catchable. I will still fish these fish every time I see them. These fish at the top, this is where it starts getting a little dicey, a little sporty. Even when they're directly above the structure, when they get way away from the peak of that structure and they get super high, that means the bait is really close to the surface. Those fish almost have to start schooling to catch them. You can get these fish to bite sometimes, and we'll talk about how to do that tonight. But you almost have to have those fish start coming up and pinning the shad all the way to the surface and schooling on them and getting active to catch those fish. They're much more difficult to catch than 1 and 2, okay? And then if I see the fish, they're not anywhere near the structure, they're way out off the side and they're super high, I don't even bother with them. The only time that I would mess with those fish, if it was an overwhelming amount of really big arcs. If I was like, holy cow, that is a suspended school of giants. It's kind of like when you're sight fishing. If it's a 12-pounder, you might spend 2 hours on it. But if it's a 5-pounder, you ain't gonna spend about 30 or 40 minutes tops on it. You know what I mean? Same deal here. If I see a school of what I think is a bunch of big heads, like huge, like 10, 15 or more 7, 8+ pound fish, if I see those kind of arcs out here, well, I've got to try, just in case I get some of them to bite. Like, I got to give it a shot. But for the most part, when they're way up and way out, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with it. So there's a few different baits that we can use, and we're going to go in depth on all of them tonight. One of my favorite baits, maybe my favorite bait for suspended fish, is going to be underspin jig heads with a swim bait on it. 1/2 ounce underspin jig heads with a swim bait on it. Also an Alabama rig, and these are the same bait. The Alabama rig's just 5 of them. When I'm trying to target bigger bass, believe it or not, I actually prefer to throw the single with a little bit bigger swim bait on it versus throwing an Alabama rig with 5 smaller swim baits on it. I catch more sand bass on an Alabama rig. Not that I don't catch sand bass on the single, but I catch more sand bass and more smaller bass on the Alabama rig. And I do catch big, dude, an Alabama rig absolutely will catch big bass, 100% it will. But I tend to catch a lot more of those smaller type of fish on the Alabama rig than I do on the single jig head with a little bit bigger swim bait. So on that jig head underspin, I'm using like a 4.5, 5-inch swim bait. And then on the Alabama rig, I'm using like a 3-inch swim bait. And I've tried upsizing the swim bait on the Alabama rig. It does no good. It doesn't change anything. The smaller swim baits get more bites, and you don't get bigger bites on the bigger swim baits, so I stay with the smaller ones. So that's one of the baits we're going to use, is swim baits with underspin blades on the jig heads. Another bait that we're going to use is going to be a flutter spoon. Okay, we're going to talk about how to use a flutter spoon tonight. And then a third bait that is kind of the finesse version of this, right? So for suspended bass, this is my finesse technique for suspended bass. And I can take 0 credit for anything that I know about this technique. I mean, I can take some credit for stuff because I've gone out there and spent a lot of time doing it, but I would have never thought to do this. I would have never tried to do this if it wasn't for a man named Mark Pack. Everybody know who Mark Pack is? Legend of Lake Fork. Super stud, man. Dude's caught 1,000,000 10-pounders out here. He's won an FLW Tour Major. He's invented things within the tackle industry that are just amazing. He's a very innovative mind. Mark Pack is an absolute legend. Well, this last thing that we're going to talk about is Pack's deal, and I'm going to talk about it first. It's the most finesse way to catch these suspended bass in the summer, and we're going to talk about throwing a giant Fluke style bait, okay, on like a 6/0, 7/0 weightless EWG hook. So a weightless Texas rig, like you know how you throw a Cinco Texas rig weightless on like a 4/0 hook or a 3/0 hook? Well, we do the same thing. Pack does the same thing, and now I do the same thing with a big 6 or 7/0 hook on a mag Fluke. And actually what we use now, Mark Pack designed a Fluke style bait for this technique called the M-Pack Shad, M-Pack, Mark Pack. M-Pack Shad, and the 7-inch one is what he uses on these big suspended bass in the summer. So, you know what, I'm gonna scratch that. We're gonna talk about the swim bait first, then the Fluke, then we'll go to the Flutter Spoon. So on the swim bait, I can't say only, if I see number 1 or number 2, especially if I see number 1, really, so we'll go to number 1. If I see number 1, hands down, the first bait that I'm gonna pick up, the bait I'm gonna have the most confidence in is gonna be that single swim bait on a jig head. And I'm gonna tell you why, because it's super easy to fish through that school and keep it in it. When those fish are off the bottom, but not 15 feet off the bottom, when they're 5 foot, 8 foot, 7, somewhere in that window, which is what number 1 is, that jig head's so easy to keep in that school, and it's a swim bait, and it's really good to draw a bite. So what you want to do is you're mapping out your school. Let's say your school is elongated this way. You want to position your boat over here and throw past the school and let that thing go all the way to the bottom. So I'm going to make a super long cast with that underspin head. Strip some line, make sure it falls straight down, doesn't swing back to me. Let it get all the way to the bottom, and then I'm just going to start slow reeling. And what's going to happen is as I slow reel, that bait's going to go like this. And it's going to go right through that school. Does that make sense? Now, it's not going to go perfectly like this, but it's simple. I don't have to count down. I don't have to make sure I know the fall rate. I don't have to have any knowledge of how this bait falls or whatever. I'm just going to throw that bait over here and slow roll it, and it's going to gradually climb all the way to the boat, and it's going to go through that school, a big percentage of that school, at some point in that cast. And you can keep it in there a long time because you're slow rolling it. You're rolling that swim bait pretty slow. When I'm slow rolling that jig head, I'm going to use a solid body paddle tail. The one I'm using right now is the 6-inch Divine swim bait. A Kitech style bait would be another good one. I know a lot of you guys are familiar with Kitechs. Just a solid body paddle tail, about 5 inches long, 4.5, 5 inches long. That's going to be your best bait for slow rolling. I really like throwing the hollow bellies on jig heads, underspins, and regular jig heads. But when I've got to slow roll it, that hollow belly is more of a fast action. You got to reel it a little bit faster to get it to really do what a hollow belly is designed to do. If those fish were closer to the bottom, then I'm throwing the hollow belly, okay? Because I can put a bigger jig head on there, keep it, and go. When I've got to get that bait to kind of slowly climb and stay elevated to have some lift to it, that paddle tail just works a lot better, okay? All right. And by the way, the jig head I'm using is a 1/2 ounce underspin. 1/2 ounce underspin is the size I'm using. I'm throwing it on 15-pound line, fluorocarbon, and I'm throwing it on not a real big rod, because these underspin jig heads don't have heavy gauge hooks. Anytime you want to decide how big a line or a rod you need, just look at the thickness of your hook. However thick the gauge of your hook is, the thicker the hook, the heavier rod and line you need. These underspin jig heads all have pretty thin wire hooks, so I'll throw it on 15-pound fluorocarbon, and I like throwing it on a 7.1 to 7.3, 7.4 medium heavy rod. I want a rod that's got some bend in it, and we're not gonna yank on them. We're not reeling down and busting them. That's not how we're setting the hook on these fish. It's almost like a crankbait. It's an exposed thin wire hook, just like you had a little thin wire on one of your treble hooks on a crankbait going into them. If you were throwing like a square bill, you're not just gonna jerk on them, because all you're hooking them with most of the time is one skinny prong of the treble. Same deal with this. You got one thin wire hook going into them. You don't wanna go to jerking on them. You're just gonna kind of reel and pull. Pull hard, but don't jerk. So that's the jig head on number 1. That's my number 1 bait. Now, number 2 is a little more difficult. If you're gonna throw that jig head underspin at number 2, you gotta know your fall rate. Because if I'm over here, if I got my boat positioned over here and I throw way over here and let it go down, the steepness of the angle from the bottom to my boat is not gonna keep that swim bait in that school for near as long. So what I really need to do is be able to stop that swim bait right here and keep it at a level. So you've really got to know your real retrieve speed to keep it at a steady level and not make it rise. And you've really got to know your fall rate and be able to count it down. I can do this on a 1/2 ounce jig head with a 5-inch deal. For me, it's going to fall almost a foot a second. It actually is just a little bit slower than a foot per second. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is if those fish are suspended 12 foot down, I'm gonna count 1001, 1002, all the way to 1012, then I'm gonna go 1013, and I'm gonna click it in. But the key is knowing this. Knowing this speed, okay, and the only way you can know that speed is to go get in the boat with me and watch my speed and know what gear ratio I'm throwing, or you go out and do it yourself and you experiment. And when that bait gets back to the boat, you start lifting your rod without reeling it in and see how far down that bait is. Okay, you let it fall 5 feet and then you try to maintain it and then you lift your rod up. Well, is that 5 foot down or is that 10 foot down? Well, I was too slow. Or did it come back to the top? I was too fast. So you really have to just time on the water and experiment with that to get that retrieve speed right to keep that bait through here. For that reason, that underspin jig head, especially with customers, is not my favorite for number 2 scenario. The other place that I really do use that underspin jig head is right here. Number 3. When I've got fish suspended super high right under the surface, it's a great bait because I can set my boat over here, I can cast to here, let the bait fall for 1 or 2 seconds and reel it right through that school. And it's in the school the whole time. This whole game with suspended fish, if you want to have success catching suspended fish, the whole trick is to keep the bait in their face as long as possible. That's the only thing that matters. There's different baits that they'll bite, but whatever bait you're throwing, you gotta keep that bait in their face to get them to bite it. The longer it's in strikeable position, the more fish you're gonna catch. That's the whole deal. So whatever bait we're talking about tonight, that's what you need. Really, when you're going out and trying to practice this and learn it on your own out on the water, you really need to focus on, okay, I've got to figure out whatever I got to do to keep this bait at the same level those fish are at, and keep it in that school as long as I can. All right, so that's the jig head underspin. I really like jig head underspins on 1 and 3, not so much on 2. The weightless giant impact shad, the 7-inch impact shad, that bait is gonna fall about a foot every 2 seconds, okay? Yeah, it's slow. Well, it's a weightless Fluke. It might fall a little bit faster than that, just a touch faster than that. And it depends on what size. If you put it on bigger line, it'll fall slower. If you put it on smaller line, it'll fall a little faster. But it's around 1.5 to 2 foot every second. I'm sorry. It's around 1 foot every 1.5 to 2 seconds. Is what I meant to say. My apologies. That technique can work on any of these scenarios. But to be good at that technique, and the reason Pac-Man's got it dialed in and not very many people, there's not very many other people that do that out here. And Pac-Man does it, the reason is because he knows. Yeah. He's got his stuff dialed in. He knows exactly how slow it falls. He knows exactly how hard and how much line to twitch it with to keep it in that school without taking it away from him and get it right back in him. How long to let it refall to get it back in that school. Like, he knows every single detail. The deal is you got to go get your fall rate down. And once you get your fall rate down on the hook you're using and the line you're using, once you know that calculation, you mark the depth they're at. Let's say these fish are at 15, okay? Well, if it's falling 1 foot every 2 seconds, let's just do that to have an even number. Then I've got to count to 30 to get it down 15 foot, okay? So I'm gonna count to 30, get it down 15 foot. Once it's down, and what you want to mark is the bottom fish on this technique. That's important because sometimes these schools may be 2, 3, 4, 5 feet tall when they're suspended. You got to mark the bottom fish's depth. That's the depth you want that fluke to fall. Once it's down there, it's you let it fall, let it fall, let it fall, tighten your line up, twitch, twitch, 2 hard twitches, let it fall about 2 or 3 more seconds, twitch, twitch. And so you see what's happening here? You've got a big giant fluke and it's going choom, choom. It's staying in their face, guys. It's staying right in their face, and that's the deal. It's the finesse version. When the wind's blowing super hard, this deal's kind of out. Like today at 10 and 11 o'clock, you couldn't do this deal. It was blowing too hard. You can do it with some wind because that bait does have some weight to it because it's a lot of plastic and a 6/7 hook's got some weight to it, but you can't do it in a ton of wind. And you really couldn't do it by yourself until we had spot lock with any wind. Now that we've got spot lock, you can go in the back, position yourself with the back of your boat is facing the fish, throw it downwind, and you can still kind of do it as long as it's not blowing just too terribly hard. But until spotlight came around, if you were by yourself and that wind was blowing, you were out of luck, Jack. Yeah, try throwing that weightless fluke into that wind and count it down when that line's doing this.
It don't work.
It ain't happening.
It ain't gonna happen at all.
It ain't happening. Now it kind of can, because if you go with the wind, your line will stay straight. So, And I guarantee you, Pac used to do it, and he used to whoop everybody out here in July and August. And he'd be out there, and Pac-Man be up there on that butt seat on that trolling motor holding her steady Eddie, and he'd get 2 guys on the back slinging it right off the back. And he's, hey, count it down now, count it down. Twitch it twice, let's go. He'd just be up there barking orders from the front deck, and they'd be catching bigs. If you've never talked to Mark Pac-Man, he's a character. He's an awesome guy.
He's a cool dude.
He'll be one of the guys you can fish with in our tournament, by the way. So that's the deal on the Fluke. It's really easy, and it can work for all scenarios. It can work for any of these scenarios. It's the finesse version. One thing that happens, especially as we get into July and August, when we really get to the dog days, you'll start seeing these sand bass schools start schooling on the surface. These sand bass schools will be going crazy. And Pac-Man has made a killing on them sand bass schools, and I'm gonna tell you how he does it. If you'll go drive right in the middle of them sand bass schools, I mean, when you see them sand bass schools pile up out there, start busting, and it looks like water's boiling, trim her up, let her rip, shut her down right in the middle of that sand bass school. Watch when your graph catches back up. Watch down there at about 20 foot, 18 foot, 17 foot. You might be over 50 or 60 foot down here in front of the dam, but watch what's about 18, 20 foot down. You'll see these big arcs, right? What's happening is there is huge bass that sit way down underneath these sand bass schools, and these sand bass go to schooling and just tearing it up. And they stun some of those shad and kill some of those shad, and those big bass just sit there and go, just suck them in. Also, those sand bass, you'll see, it's funny because if you're on those schools and you watch your electronics, when those sand bass start fading out, like, because they'll get up, stay up for a while sometimes, and when they start to fade, and some of those sand bass start getting tired and full and lazy, and some of those sand bass start to ease back down under the surface, and you can see them on your graph right below your boat, start to ease back down, all of a sudden those big arcs will start streaking up. They're eating those dog-tired sand bass that have been filling themselves up, gorging themselves, and been wearing themselves out. Now those sand bass are tired, and those big bass just sit down there, and when those sand bass start sliding down, boom, they come up and eat one. So they're picking off easy meals, and they're just following those sand bass schools around, being lazy, like we do on Sunday on the couch, you know. They're just easing around, chilling, looking up. Something falls their way. It's a shad. It's easy to eat. Suck it in. Sand bass gets tired. Oh, here's my opportunity. Right? Hey, it's no different than us on the couch on a football Sunday. We sitting there, and the nachos are sitting there. We'll grab one, right? But boy, when Mama says, "Hey, that steak's ready," boom, off the couch we go. Same deal right here. Same exact deal. So that Fluke, okay, what does that Fluke imitate? Well, as those sand bass are up there killing those shad and they start sliding down, that Fluke imitates those shad falling to those big bass. And man, if you find that scenario, it doesn't just show up every day out here, but if you find those big sand bass schools and those big arcs underneath them, and you put that big old super Fluke down there, and you get the right timing and you're patient enough to get that bait down there to them, you will have some of the best days of your life doing that. It's unbelievable how effective it can be. It's really, really good. So that's the Fluke deal. Is there any questions so far on the Swimbait or the Fluke? No?
You don't usually kind of wait it out.
Well,
I mean,
the 6 or 7/0 hook, it acts as the weight.
Yeah.
The problem is if you start using weight, the bait's going to fall too fast. You're not going to keep it in the school as long. So if the bait's falling faster, it's going to twitch up and down faster. It's not going to stay in the school as long. You want that super slow fall. Is it a pain in the butt to make it fall that slow for 17 foot? Yep. But boy, when you get it from 17 to 20 and you can keep it there, it sure is handy. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the deal on that is it kind of almost defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do in that situation if you start adding weight to it. Any other questions on the Fluke or the Swimbait before we move to the spoon? I must be doing a great job explaining it.
That's big sight because literally I haven't had to literally say a word. I'm just sitting there.
Yeah, that's it.
He's a yes man to that.
He's co-signing for me. Co-signing. He looking good in them shades, though. I'll tell you what.
That's something that I need to take. I was taking them off your head right now.
Yeah, you got some new ones coming, I know.
New water.
These are the new Waterland glasses. Yeah, these are the new Waterland glasses. These are kind of dirty because I've been fishing in them all week and got sunscreen and everything else on them.
Let me see them. I got to try them on.
Go ahead, try them on.
Because if I don't get the right frame, I look like a gnat in them.
He looks like a gnat.
That probably looks bad on it.
No, it doesn't look bad. I mean, it's kind of stretched out from my big old watermelon head.
You got a big old head.
Well, I'm a big guy, man. Yeah, these are the new Waterland.
Those float too, like that.
They don't float. They don't float.
Not
But
bad.
I'll tell you, lens quality on these glasses, this is the best copolymer lens I've ever seen. I mean, the best. Listen, I loved amphibian. I used them adamantly. And y'all know in the spring I sight fish a lot. Well, I got these back before the spring, right before the spring sight fishing season started. And I'm telling you, the first week I did this. I promise you I see better than these. Or I wouldn't have went to them. I had a great deal with Amphibia. I'd have never left Amphibia if these weren't better.
Yeah.
And the bonus for all of y'all is these are almost half the price.
They're on sale right now for like $113.
They're on sale. They've got them on like a 25% off sale for the launch. And then you go to Waterland Co, waterlandco.com, and you order you some glasses. You punch in the code Your Lake Fork Guide, just like you do on 6 cents. You get a 10% discount on these. Now you got $103 and a pair of glasses that's a better lens than some of the $200 glasses out there.
I know, like the first
Really
day
good
that
deal.
they was launched, they sold out of like 6 of the styles of them. Like
Yeah.
6 or 7 of the styles.
They're out of,
They're sold
what
out.
color do I got? I got a blue mirror.
They've got those, I think.
They're out of green mirror in this model right now. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for glasses and you're looking for a deal on glasses, I mean, heck, if you've got Costas, right, you could probably sell your Costas for $100 and get these and go buy these and not spend any money and end up with better lenses.
Yeah.
Like, that's the